What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved actresses finds herself in a heated exchange that spirals completely out of control on live television? The tension in the studio was palpable from the very first moment. Sandra Bullock walked onto that stage. You could see it in her eyes. You could feel it in the air. And what unfolded next left the entire audience in complete shock. Before we dive into this wild story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me what you think about this situation. Because trust me, you're going to have opinions. So, let's set the scene. Sandra Bullock was scheduled to appear on The View to discuss her latest project, what should have been a straightforward promotional appearance. She walked out with her signature smile, waving to the audience, looking as graceful and composed as ever. The hosts greeted her warmly, and for the first few minutes, everything seemed perfectly normal. They exchanged pleasantries, talked about the weather, made small jokes. Sandra was charming. The audience was engaged, and it looked like it was going to be just another successful interview. But then Joy Behar started asking questions. Now, to understand what happened, you need to understand the dynamic that was building. Joy has never been one to hold back her opinions. And on this particular day, she seemed especially eager to dig deeper than the surface level publicity talking points. She started off innocently enough, asking Sandra about her preparation for the role, about working with the director, about the themes of the film. Sandra answered each question thoughtfully, professionally, giving the kind of responses you'd expect from someone who's been doing press tours for decades. But Joy kept pushing. She asked Sandra about a particular scene in the movie, one that dealt with some controversial subject matter. Sandra explained her perspective on it, talking about the character's motivation and the story's context. Joy nodded along, but you could see something brewing behind her eyes. She wasn't satisfied with the answer. She wanted more. That's when Joy said something that made Sandra's entire demeanor shift. She questioned whether Sandra really understood the implications of what the scene was portraying, whether she had considered how certain communities might react to it, whether she thought Hollywood was being responsible in telling these kinds of stories. The way she phrased it, it wasn't really a question at all. It was a challenge. Sandra paused. You could see her taking a breath, recalibrating. She responded calmly, saying that she had actually spent a lot of time consulting with people from those communities, that the entire production team had been very thoughtful about the approach, that they had sensitivity readers and consultants involved throughout the process. She explained that the whole point of the scene was to shed light on something important, not to exploit it. Joy cut her off. The atmosphere shifted instantly as the conversation moved from standard movie promotion to a critique of Sandra's very right to play the role. Joy's insistence that intent doesn't outweigh impact hung heavy in the air, and the other hosts began to look visibly uncomfortable. Whoopi shifted in her seat, while Sunny looked down at her notes. Sensing the collision course the interview was on, Sarah attempted to jump in with a lighter question, hoping to redirect the energy, but Joy was relentless. She turned the heat up, asking Sandra if she didn't think there was something inherently problematic about an actress of her background taking on this specific role when there were other people who could tell the story more authentically. Sandra's jaw tightened, the first real sign that her patience was wearing thin. She replied that while she understood that perspective, the essence of acting is about stepping into someone else's shoes. That is literally the job description. She argued that limiting actors to only playing characters exactly like themselves would stifle storytelling in a way that helps no one. Joy fired back immediately, claiming it was easy for Sandra to say that from a position of immense access, having never been shut out of rooms or had her own story co-opted by others. She noted that Hollywood has a long, dark history of this, and being likable shouldn't give Sandra a pass. The audience was dead silent. The earlier cheers replaced by a thick, awkward tension. Sandra's professional polish was finally cracking. She stated carefully that she resented the implication that she hadn't thought deeply about her responsibilities. She had given everything to this role and was proud of the work. Joy let out a small, dismissive laugh, saying that while actors always work hard, it doesn't answer the fundamental question of whether she should have been the one to do it in the first place. That's when Sandra's demeanor changed completely. She looked directly at Joy and told her she came to talk about a film she cared about, not to be interrogated about her right to work. She called the move an ambush, noting that if Joy wanted a real conversation about representation, this wasn't the way to do it. Joy's eyes widened, insisting she was just asking the legitimate questions the viewers at home wanted to hear. She even suggested that if Sandra couldn't handle challenging questions, she shouldn't take on challenging roles. Sandra put her hand up, a firm gesture for silence, and told Joy that while she can handle questions, she won't be told by someone who hasn't walked in her shoes that she doesn't have the right to tell stories. Sandra's firm stance didn't quiet the room. Instead, it ignited a new level of volatility. She pointed out that everyone at the table made their living by expressing opinions and using their platform. Yet none of the hosts were being questioned about their right to do so. The other hosts tried to intervene once more. Sensing the situation was reaching a breaking point, Whoopi attempted to mediate, suggesting they all take a breath and acknowledging that the territory they were entering required more time than a single segment allowed. But Sandra was no longer in the mood for mediation. She turned to Whoopi and stated clearly that she did not need her to manage the conversation, asserting that she was perfectly capable of speaking for herself. This left Whoopi sitting back with her hands raised, visibly taken aback by the actress's uncharacteristic sharpness. Joy jumped back into the fray, accusing Sandra of being defensive and proving that people in positions of privilege dislike being challenged. She framed the conflict as a symptom of a larger problem in Hollywood, where she claimed everyone wants praise for doing the bare minimum but refuses to examine the systems they benefit from. Sandra's voice grew quieter and more intense. She told Joy that she knew nothing about what she had been through, what she had overcome, or what she had to fight for throughout her life and career. She accused Joy of judging and dissecting people from the safety of a desk, backed by co-hosts and a curated audience. When Sandra challenged Joy to talk about real systems of privilege rather than just using the buzzword, the studio audience let out a collective gasp. Joy's face turned crimson. She leaned forward, asserting that she had earned everything she had through decades of struggle in the industry, and warned Sandra not to lecture her about privilege when she had been coasting on her status as America's sweetheart. Sandra's response was a sharp, bitter laugh. She questioned the idea that her career was coasting, noting that every role she had fought for and every project she had produced had been scrutinized and doubted. She argued that the fundamental difference between them was that she actually creates things and puts herself out there to be judged, while Joy simply makes a living judging the work of others without ever having to put her own heart on the line in the same way. This prompted Joy to actually stand up from her chair in indignation, claiming her own work was on the line every day. The confrontation reached its peak as both women stood their ground, literally and figuratively. Joy insisted that she faced constant criticism and had been canceled or boycotted more times than Sandra could imagine. She claimed that, unlike the actress, she owned her mistakes rather than hiding behind a wall of publicists. Sandra shot back that she wasn't hiding behind anyone at that moment. She was standing right there, refusing to accept an unfair attack with a polite smile. As Sunny tried to force a commercial break, the two women remained locked in a private war of words, ignoring the production cues entirely. Joy argued that being a good person or doing charity work didn't exempt Sandra from criticism, but Sandra countered that Joy wasn't acting as a journalist seeking truth. She was acting as a provocateur, seeking a viral moment. Sandra accused Joy of wielding her platform like a weapon to force submission rather than foster a real conversation. She pointed out the irony of Joy claiming to fight for social justice while using destructive, bullying tactics on live television. The exchange turned even more personal when Joy claimed the audience could see through Sandra's performance, leading Sandra to state that the audience was actually watching a guest who had come in good faith be ambushed by a host with a preset agenda. Whoopi tried one last time to salvage the segment, but Joy turned on her own co-host, accusing Whoopi of letting the situation spiral. Sandra noted that Joy simply couldn't stand the fact that she wasn't backing down, calling out the host for needing to win the argument at any cost. In the final moments of the segment, Sandra began unhooking her microphone. She told the table she was done, and that the interview had been a mistake from the start. As Joy shouted that walking away was a sign of privilege and immaturity, Sandra stopped at the edge of the stage for one final remark. She explained that she wasn't running away. She was choosing not to engage with someone who had no interest in an actual, nuanced dialogue. She told Joy that they had indeed seen the real Sandra Bullock, someone who refuses to be bullied. As she walked off the set, the studio fell into a stunned silence, leaving the hosts to scramble for a commercial break. What started as a simple movie promo had transformed into a cultural flashpoint, leaving the public to debate where the line exists between holding the powerful accountable and simply trying to tear them down for the sake of a headline. I have completed the 4 chapters as requested. Is there anything else I can help you with today?